You are entering an investing state of mind the system doesn't want you in. The truth. You want answers? Michael Covel has them on the Trend Following Radio Network. And now, reaching over 130 countries and territories, Michael Covel.
Today on the show, I have Gerald Celente. Gerald is the publisher of the TrendsJournal. He is very well known to those that have been listening to radio for the last few decades. Very well known, very strong opinions, very passionate. And I think he really lays out a nice perspective about where we are today. And I think maybe, just maybe, he might get a few in the audience to perhaps think a little bit more.
Hello, Michael.
Hey, Gerald. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, and how are you?
I'm not too bad, not too bad. I'm currently in Southeast Asia today, so where are you? You're in New York?
Upstate, about an hour and a half north of the city.
Well, I'll tell you what, right, since I've only got you for about 30 minutes today, I want to jump right in. And I want you, because you've got a nice historical reference for the last many decades, and you really have put the pieces together. But can you explain to the audience how awful and nefarious this concept of the zero interest rate policy is? And it's going to lead into a lot of other topic areas, but I just see the fact that people have given up on the idea of no more interest income, that saving is useless, and it's like people have just rolled over and they don't even care anymore.
It's not only that they don't even care anymore, they don't even know anymore. Again, I'm old enough to remember when this quaint habit of people working and what little extra money they had, they'd put away into a bank and they'd open a savings account and they get interest on the money that they put in there that was above the inflation rate. And and again, when I was a kid, they used to have all these ads, Eastern Airlines, of course, they're gone. Come on down, go to Florida. And all the retirees started going down there. People could actually retire on what they saved. And that concept is long gone. And when you really see the beginning of the death of it has been going on for quite some time. But it really became very apparent after 9/11. And people forget that prior to 9/11, just months before, Bush was elected in November of 2000. The country was in a severe recession. The dot-com bubble had burst in March of 2000. He was really disliked. And then 9/11 came. And what happened? They told everyone, go out and spend money. They lowered interest rates to 46-year lows. That's what created the housing bubble, all of these other bubbles that went along with it. The nation was in a recession. And then, of course, when they began to raise interest rates later on in the 2000s, 2005, 2006, you started seeing the results happen immediately, with the housing bubble bursting. The only thing that has kept this so-called recovery alive is the trillions, that's right, trillions of dollars of worthless money that the Federal Reserve has been dumping into the system, and record low interest rates, near zero interest rates. And when interest rates go up, the economy goes down. So what else they have done by lowering interest rates and people putting money in the banks and getting basically zero back, is they're forcing them to gamble in the equity markets. So again, it's an interest rate recovery. It cannot go on forever. And as you well know, being a professional in the field that you are in and knowing it so well, the only reason these emerging markets emerged at the levels that they have is because of all the hot money flowing into them, because U.S. interest rates were so cheap, they could get all the money they wanted, brought it home, got a higher interest rate on it, and then started another bubble. And now, of course, interest rates are going up, and the emerging market bubble is popped.
It's frightening. We have allowed men on Wall Street with the puppets in DC to basically have boom bust scenarios as far as the eye can see. And I'm starting to wonder if just people are so whiplashed and so afraid, they're just willing to believe anything a talking head tells them.
It's not only in that, it's in every field. You know, the United States is talking now about attacking Syria. And I watched yesterday 3 painful hours of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearings. You know what it reminded me of, Michael? It was like being in high school and listening to the principal lecture you and then the teachers chiming in. It was a freak show. And I'm saying to myself, how can any self-respecting adult believe these jerks? And it's a circle jerk. It's the Beltway circle jerks and the DC drama queens. And it just goes on. So what's going on with the rest of the people? All right. Again, I remember, growing up, in college, they had this song, I take the 8:19 into the city and I get to work by 9. Nobody takes the 8:15 into the city anymore. They're on the road at 5:15. They're getting home at 7, 8 o'clock at night. Those are the people that have jobs. The other ones in Slavelandia are working in these terrible joints called Staples and Home Depot and Lowe's and CVS and on and on, and Target and Macy's, Walmart's, the whole deal. So people have no lives. They have no money. Again, I'm old enough to remember this quaint little thing they used to have. Pharmacists. That's right. The people that grew up in the community or moved into the community, opened up the drugstores. They're gone. The people that had hardware stores. Right up here in Colonial Kingston, where our offices are, there was O'Reilly's stationery store down the block. Well, Staples and Office Depot gobbled them up. It's a it's a multinational takeover, and it's global. So people have nothing, and they've lost their minds. Look what they look like. Look what they're eating. Fast food? There's no such thing as fast food. It's crap food, and they look like crap. They think like crap. They drink crap. They have crappy jobs. They get crappy pay. The mind is turned to crap. They don't know what's going on. They can't see what's going on. And they become so desensitized, they don't even know what's going on when it hits them in the face or over the head.
As you mentioned, the desensitization, I'm thinking that here we are, America prepared to attack another country that, as far as I can tell, I think most rational people would say there's no interest in America being there. But I think on a really tangible level, I think people should imagine what happens when drones and cruise missiles go to Syria. You're literally talking about the vaporization of small children into a fine blood mist. Now, can you imagine if that was your child or your nephew or your niece? When you really put it in such graphic terms, I think maybe that's one way to get it across. You're a pretty straightforward guy.
I do put it in those terms. It doesn't make any difference. Listen, 3 people died in the Boston Marathon bombing. Tragedy. How many people died in drone strikes? I mean, pick up the papers. Every day, 6 dead, 28 dead, 14 dead, 37 dead in Iraq. I mean, this goes on, 3,000 Iraqis dead in the last, couple of months. Their skin is the wrong color, and it's not at home. So let's call it what it is. And again, the people have also become desensitized particularly young people, by these video games. They're all war games out there. It's only a game, Michael.
Yeah.
And it's far away. And again, look, all they need in the United States is another terror attack, false flag or real. And this whole country, you're going to see the yellow ribbons come out again and the flags wave. It's like everybody has attention deficit disorder. Again, I watched those hearings yesterday. Let's get this straight for everyone listening. The United States has not won a war since World War II. They have lost Korea. They lost Vietnam. They lost Iraq. They've lost Afghanistan. Our Nobel Peace Prize winner, president, by the way, introduced another 33,000 troops into Afghanistan immediately upon getting elected with the so-called troop surge that was going to bring freedom and prosperity around the globe, or particularly in Afghanistan, and also the wonderful Libyan humanitarian mission. You know that time-limited, scope-limited kinetic action, as they called it, and now it's destabilized the entire country and the region, and now they're going to fix Syria. So if people can't get outraged over this, as by the way, Detroit goes bankrupt, you don't want to have a picnic in Camden, don't drive through Trenton with your doors unlocked. How about a lovely day in East St. Louis? I mean, go around the country, look at the decline and the money going overseas to fruitless wars. The people are out of touch. They're out of their minds, and they think that they have a representative form of government when these clowns only represent the people that give them the most amount of money or have the most power.
Gerald, you've thought about this a lot. Is there anything that can happen to stop this kind of train that's left the station? And I think you accurately stated that it was post the dot-com bubble where basically people had lost their life savings, so to speak, and 9/11 hit, and basically the government said, we're gonna be your father, and we're gonna save you from every boogeyman that's out there, and we're gonna lower those rates. And I think you correctly outlined exactly what's happened since. Is there a moment? When can it reset? When can something happen? What could that something be that maybe for us thinking people that are still left, that there could be a reset? There could be maybe something that allows us to get back to some sanity.
To me, I'm at this for over 30 years. I began the Trends Research Institute in 1980. And as I keep, getting older, I keep looking back, and, I'm not the same guy I was when I started. And I did a lot of work, spiritually, emotionally, and physically to keep growing. And I believe that's what has to happen. There has to be a reset to morality. And that seems totally gone now. It's not even in the books. And to me, it's when the individual changes, everything changes. And enough individuals have to change. When I wrote Trends 2000 back in 1995, if there was one mistake, Michael, that I made, I was too optimistic. That whole New Age movement was starting to flourish. And people were really looking for the inner self to change the outer world. And then the dot-com boom started to happen. I watched it. My generation, the baby boom generation, became everything that they hated. They're the biggest hypocrites out there. And by the way, that greatest generation that Tom Brokaw writes about, that's a lot of BS as well. The greatest generation gave us Levittowns, suburbs, fast foods, and big agriculture, agribusiness. So yeah, they did some nice things, but guess what? They set the model for destruction. They're also the ones, and again, how could it happen on a practical level? No matter what country you're in, no matter what community you live in, and again, I want to preface this with the words taught to me by my dear father. May his soul rest in peace. Anytime I'd be shooting my mouth off, he'd look at me in an Italian, he'd say, "Papagallo, parrot. Stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself." And so what I have to say, this is only the way I see it. I'm not telling people how to think or what to believe, like these wanker politicians I watched yesterday for 3 hours. So to me, whatever country or community you live in, you have to build your own. So support each other. That means buying local. That means growing local. It means globalization has only helped the multinationals. Put in place those acts that were in place before that build your nations to the levels that they were. In America, we had, for instance, the Glass-Steagall Act that Bill Clinton actually began under Carter. He was the first deregulator of any major significance with the airlines and also banking. And then it accelerated under Reagan, Bush, and then Clinton put it into high gear. He deregulated not only the Glass-Steagall, the banking industry, acts that were put in place purposefully when the Great Depression was going on because of the destruction that the banks wrought with the crash of 29. And also he deregulated the communications industry and others. And then you go back and look at all of the deregulations that happened. I was mentioning about why we used to have, entrepreneurs, stationery stores, haberdashers, dress shops, pharmacies, hardware stores, etc., is because laws were in place. The Clayton Antitrust Act, the Robertson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act. Michael, if you wanted to go into business, and let's say you wanted to sell silverware, and you went to the manufacturer of the silverware and glasses and things, and tableware, and said you wanted to buy 5 dozen of these, 8 dozen of those, or 12 dozen of this, he'd give you a price. And then Mr. Big walks in behind you and says, I want 100 dozen of these, 300 dozen of those, and 800 dozen of that. Who would get the best price today? Well, obviously Mr. Big. But not in the old days, not in America. It was a level playing field. Everyone got the same price. And that's why you had competition. That's why people, even the milkman, could buy a home and retire on the savings that he had. Those days are gone.
You mentioned the level playing field. And I think a clear example of this, and even for people that don't understand the banking industry, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there were four investment banks coming into 2008. Bear Stearns went under, Lehman Brothers went under, but when the big daddy, with all the political connections, when Goldman Sachs and then Morgan Stanley were faced with the guillotine, they were saved. And I think at that moment in time, you just kind of, all bets are off. It's a rigged game. When a company that should be belly up, gone under, the capitalism has just destructed as it does, and they were saved. That's just so disturbing to me.
Well, again, in going back, there was no such thing as interstate banking before. You had all your local banks. That was a deregulation process that began under Carter. And then, as you mentioned, too big to fail. And those words don't apply to capitalism. Capitalism is dead. Capitalism didn't destroy this country. When you mention those 4 words, too big to fail, they're very clear. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. It's called fascism. That's the definition. And I don't want people to email me and say, no, that's not the definition. It is the definition. They're making it up to be something else. That's what Mussolini called it. And Mussolini knew a thing or two about fascism. It's a corporate takeover. It's fascism. Look, Michael, you know the deal. You talk about lobbyists. The corporations write the rules. They write the laws. And by the way, I'm not talking as an outsider. I began my career out of graduate school running political campaigns in Westchester County, which was the richest county in the United States. I was very good at it, and they sent me up to Albany, the state capital, and I was the assistant to the secretary of the New York State Senate. I went on and designed and instructed American politics and campaign technology at St. John's University, and for several years, I was the chief government affairs specialist for a section of the chemical industry. My specialty was antimicrobials in D.C. One of our chief writers in the TrendsJournal is Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. So it's not like we don't know what it looks like on the other side. I have a very clear vision of it. It's a complete takeover. And what astounds me the most is how so-called self-respecting adults could bow down, cheer, wave their flags, and salute their commanders-in-chief, their prime ministers, and their chancellors, their senators, their parliamentarians, and their congressmen, and any other elected officials. It is a disgusting spectacle to me that people follow their two-bit leaders. Whether it was Mussolini, Hitler, or all of the rest go through history right up to the present. To me, it's a freak show. It's a sideshow. It's a carnival show. And guess what? The people pay for the tickets to go to the circus and look at the freaks and go to the sideshows.
You know, let me give some perspective from where I'm currently in Saigon tonight, and I've been here for a few months, and it's interesting observations as a man who's in his mid-40s, who thought back in high school when they bombed the Beirut barracks and they started up selective service. I figured, okay, I'm going to be in the middle of a Middle East war at some point in time. But now, fast forward a couple years, and here I am in Saigon making observations of this culture and these people, and looking at it all and saying to myself, what in blazes was America doing here? What was the goal? And I think the only conclusion you can come to, it was an economic goal for some group of people, defense contractors, political people. But I mean, these people don't want to fight. They just want to run their lives, have their kids, and to think and look at some of the bombing we did over here. And look, I'm not trying to be a peacenik or anything, but when you're on the ground and you meet people and you see their kids, and you see kids, that's the thing. You see kids on the ground, and then you say to yourself, we were just strafing the whole country with carpet bombing, and you just shake your head and say, what in blazes were we doing? And now, here we are all these years later, and they've lined up, as you've described, in D.C. to say, let's go do it again in Syria. And I think the fun note that I saw, I didn't see any of the news that you saw. I didn't watch any of the hearings, but I did see that McCain was playing poker on his iPhone.
McCain playing, they call him a war hero, by the way. And here's a guy, you talk about carpet bombing. He was no war hero. His plane crashed when it got shot down bombing innocent Vietnamese. Not a hero. And by the way, just so you know, I dodged the draft. I was perfect draft age. And it wasn't that I was intelligent enough to be opposed to the war. I couldn't just imagine me, a lot of weight on my back getting shot at in a foreign country. But I went to Vietnam in 1995 when it first opened up to the West. And I remember when Highway 1 didn't go from Hue to Hanoi. And I remember when in 1995, Michael, that there was no mechanized equipment in the farms. All it was the buffalo. What do you call them?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And the oxen and people with implements, hand tools, and there was hardly any car. I remember when there was still rickshaws in Saigon when they were just or Ho Chi Minh City, I should say, when they were just banning them. and bringing in, and very few places had motorcycles. So I remember, being among the first Americans in there, and I spent 3 weeks there, going from the Mekong Delta up to Hanoi, and how the people didn't hate the Americans. And one of the guys said to me, look, he said, before the Americans, there were the French. And before the French, there were the Chinese. And it's the way of war. When is society, you asked me the question about when things could change. When will we have a level of morality? People walking around with this ego on their heads and chips on their shoulder. Today I was just reading another story yet about the remains of King Richard III. They dug the cat up. He's under a parking lot where he was buried, right? It tells you what dust we are and how we have these ego trips that are destroying so much of ourselves and others. But an interesting footnote that no one's talking about with the king. The king is dead. The footnote is that he died in a battle and they were fighting the War of Roses. What a beautiful name. When he died, the war ended. So to me, and he was, by the way, the last English king that fought in a war. Let these so-called boys out there, these tough big mouths, we're going to take out Assad, we're going to take out Hussein, you want to go take them out, take them out. Go do the fighting. Lead the charge. If you don't lead the charge, shut your mouth. Anybody that wants to go to war, pick up your gear and go fight. Send your wife, send your kids, send your money. You said you're not a peacenik. I am. I'm not a pacifist. Anybody tries to attack me, I'll take them out as quick as I can. And I mean that. I'm a second-degree black belt in close combat. I don't bother anybody. But if somebody's going to bother me, be prepared to die. But I don't go looking for a fight. And if I do go looking for a fight, I deserve to get what I brought onto myself. Anybody that wants to fight, go fight. Keep me out of your psycho trip. And the United States and their coalition of the willing, you got a bunch of guys and women on a psycho trip. I heard Barbara Boxer. I heard another one. Who was it over there? The senator, another woman senator from New Hampshire. You should have heard the war talk spewing out of their mouths. I'm tired of hearing, if only the women were in charge, there'd be no war. These women had warhawk mouths as big as the rest of the little boys in the crowd. There was not one guy, not one woman there calling for peace or saying, hey, no foreign entanglements. That's what our country was founded on.
Gerald, I don't disagree with any of that. My peacenik comment was more just to make an illustration, but I think for me, I have a hard time when I think about the little kids, and like I said, walking the streets of Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon, and you see little kids and you say, well, this is a country that my country was bombing many years ago. And now my country is proposing to go bomb another country that 99.9% of Americans will never set foot in. And it's just a sad situation. And I do hope that the reset to a more moral and perhaps more ethical society, I hope that reset happens. I don't know what it's going to be.
You're doing what you're doing. You're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. When enough people start doing, it's very simple. It's as old as the scriptures. The golden rule. Do unto others. Yeah. And, I'm thinking about already the top trend I had for 2013 was war. And I'm right on target on that one. I'm thinking of already the top trends for 2014. And one of them is going to be altruism. We better start doing more for others. And you're doing more for others, you're really doing more for yourself. So extend your hand, be kind, have some generosity. I'm sick of this bottom line mentality. I'm looking at a photo of you, how eloquently you're dressed and what a gentleman you are. More of that. More of dignity and respect. More of courage and passion. And then we'll start seeing things differently. Again, it begins with the individual. And if we don't change, the psychopaths in charge are going to change it for us. And we're not going to like it. We create the future, unless you want somebody else to. And I see a much brighter future. Look, the Renaissance followed the Dark Ages. We're in the Dark Age now. We could have a Renaissance.
Gerald, we have to wrap up, but I want to give people a chance to go find out more about you. What is the single best website address for them to go find out more about Gerald Celente?
TrendsJournal.com, TrendsJournal.com. And the new issue is out, a whole new look. And we make it available to everyone if they can't afford the full price. There's a discount request page because we'll show them history before it happens so they can prepare, survive, and thrive in these current difficult times ahead.
Gerald, I've been a fan of your straight talk for a long time, and I love the passion. Sometimes people get scared of passion. I don't. I love passion. Passion, when people get passionate, there's usually a huge amount of truth behind that passion, so I love it.
Well, thank you, Michael. Much appreciated, and all the best to you.
We'll talk soon. If you want to learn how to be a trend-following trader, the first place to go is trendfollowing.com. My firm can help you with educational, research, and systems trading packages to get you started immediately. Take advantage of my 15 years of experience. Take advantage of all the insights that I've accumulated and put into one research and educational package. These are systems that you can use immediately to start making money. Once again, go to trendfollowing.com.